In this Patreon-requested album review, I was asked to listen to Vektor's Terminal Redux, which was released earlier this year. In the course of a month, I try to plan ahead for what albums I want to review so that I know how to time things out, but with so many bands releasing music on a weekly basis, I unfortunately missed some. In some of those instances, it might be from a band I didn't even know existed. Vektor, who had their debut in 2009, is a band that combines prog metal and thrash into an extremely interwoven sound. This is a band who has since toured with big names in metal like Testament and Iced Earth, and released 3 full albums including the 73-minute Terminal Redux, which was released on May 6th. This is the ambitious album from a band who has been working for years to prove their worth in the metal scene. There are many bands who rush an album to make label deadlines or push for another payday while on the road. Vektor might have the right formula in staying true to what they create though, as over a year was spent in studio recording this album, and songs from the album were played almost 2 years prior to album release. Terminal Redux is a progressive story about a spaceman who was left in isolation as part of an experiment, and after memory loss he finds a space molecule that will rejuvenate life. The spaceman then becomes mad for power and infuses an army with the molecule to combine war-torn planets together. This album is literally the combination of a space opera behind a thrash metal score. Some people who hear thrash will expect a harsh, deep vocalist who sounds like he swallowed gravel and is trying to shout it back out. David DeSanto is the type of singer who will shock many people when heard because his high octave adds a great contrast to the hard-hitting music that Terminal Redux has to offer. Ultimate Artificer is one of the songs that was performed live over a year ago before seeing the light of day on a studio release. It's just over 5 minutes but sells this entire album and how talented everyone is in Vektor. DeSanto's vocals on the higher end along with some fantastic and relentless drumming from Blake Anderson make the track fly by fast and leaves your head spun. I'm glad that I was introduced to Vektor with Terminal Redux and specifically in Ultimate Artificer because it quickly got me excited for everything after the halfway point on this album. It was the song that really perked my interest in the band. The build-up from the first 2 tracks, Charging the Void and Cygnus Terminal, shock your senses and set the pace as it all flows like a good prog album should. Even with the short and somewhat romanticized track Mountains Above the Sun, the fast, loud feeling still feels present in almost every second of this album. Even if it's hard to keep up with the story at times due to just how heavy Terminal Redux can get, there are tracks and sequences within those tracks on the album that will have you marveling. As much as it is to take in, it's worth the time and investment to really blast this album and find out what your favorite parts are because there are many worth choosing from. The opening tracks, like I talked about earlier and how they shock your senses, truly feel eye-opening as an introduction to Terminal Redux. When you listen to Cygnus Terminal and all the speed changes along an over 8-minute track time, it's hard not to be impressed and at times overwhelmed. The guitars have a great build to give a dramatic feeling and it sounds like unbridled creativity. The further you listen along the total length of Terminal Redux, the more it becomes obvious that this album needed a lot of in-studio time to work on so many elements involved. The patience and tenacity paid off. On the second half of the album, you feel the intensity roll and that builds to an electric climax and an amazing closing track in Recharging the Void. I loved the end of this album. It again changes speed several times in over 13 minutes and it blends the heavy and melodic while still feeling like a grand finale in style and keeping its heart in thrash. The quiet singing and background female vocals add another level of depth to the story and musically it builds to make the final 4 minutes shine. There are many great moments on fantastic tracks on Terminal Redux, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't easy to lose focus with so much going on. It's the type of album you desperately want to sit down with and listen to from beginning to end, but after so much speed and energy in any given 10-minute segment, your brain just starts to feel overloaded. That, however, can't be really blamed on Vektor, but just the listener's natural attention span. Over the course of a year, you can miss a lot of great music. It's instances like this, though, that I'm glad a patron wanted me to cover a progressive thrash album from a band I feel has enough potential and talent to be a bigger name than many others in metal. Whether it's your style or not, you cannot deny the creativity and ambition in such a large album like this. Overall, Terminal Redux gives you more than enough for your money if you are a fan of fantastic thrash guitar work, brutal drumming, a unique singer, and a chaotic science fiction story. It may not be something you can pick up and blast without your brain melting, but for those willing to take the brunt of something this enormous, you will not be disappointed.